So a little over 8 months ago, I made a video showcasing a collection of home screen launchers that were not only super unique, but they were just downright fun to use. But the kind of cool thing is that those 5 launchers barely scratch the surface when it comes to how many more crazy and wacky third-party launchers there actually are available on the Google Play Store. And so for today's video, I thought it would be fun to go back to the drawing board to try and find 5 more launchers to showcase. But the key ingredients I was looking for in these launchers is that they had to be updated in the last year or so, and they of course also had to be super unique compared to what we're normally used to. As with the last video, we're going to start with the simpler launchers and then work our way up to the super crazy launchers as we go along. But with that being said, let's dive in to launcher number 1. Okay, kicking off the list today is Flow Productivity Launcher. And in comparison to some of the other launchers on today's list, this is a relatively underrated launcher with under 100k downloads at the time of making this video. But this is a minimalist style launcher that focuses on maximizing productivity, but it's also got a few handy features up its sleeve that makes it a little more unique compared to other similar minimalist style launchers. Before we get to those features though, if we take a look at the home screen here, you can see that by default we have a completely black background, 5 app icons that I chose during the setup process, and then a few handy shortcuts and widgets at the top and at the bottom. So at the top we have a time and date widget, and tapping on that launches into the clock application. Then below that is a sort of at a glance style widget that'll either show upcoming calendar events or sometimes screen time information. Then at the bottom, we have this arrow icon that we can tap on to launch into a list of all of our apps. And this is also accessible by swiping down here as well. Then to the right of that, we have shortcuts to the messages and phone applications respectively. Then over on the left here, we have this focus mode shortcut, and tapping on that opens up a Pomodoro timer tool. And when this is activated, you'll only be able to access the homepage here and not the app drawer, which in theory should allow you to focus for a set period of time. But if we stop that timer and head back into our app drawer, you can see that we can sort apps into various categories, including apps that we use the most, which is pretty neat. And then swiping back down and over to the right, and here we get this page of additional widgets, all designed to enhance productivity. So we've got a calendar widget up the top, a built-in tasks widget below that, which you can quickly add to by tapping this plus icon here. And then below that is this screen time section, which gives us an overview of the apps we've been using the most, as well as an overall screen time counter. And then you can also tap this button down the bottom here to add any old widget that you like, and that is it for our main screens. But back up the top here, and there are also some additional settings found under this settings menu here, including a bunch of customization settings like switching between different preloaded minimal wallpapers, increasing the amount of favorite apps on the home screen to 10, adjusting the icon shape, hiding apps from the app drawer. There are also a bunch of themes for the home shortcut icons and calendar widget. Plus, there's obviously a few other handy customizations as well. But that's it, and I've got to say, I really dig this launcher, and I appreciate the various options it adds into the mix to make this sort of a minimal launcher experience even more productivity focused. Plus, it's just got a super clean design as well. All right, next launcher on the list today is called Lens Launcher. And this is probably one of the oldest launchers on this list because it has been around forever. But then on top of that, it's by far going to be the quickest to showcase as well. And that's because this main page here, this is literally it. There are no customization options, no hidden shortcuts, and whilst there is a settings menu, everything found within it is actually locked, and you can only unlock these settings if you upgrade to the Pro version. But despite that, what makes this launcher so unique is that instead of scrolling or swiping through long lists or multiple pages of apps, you can instead see every single one of your apps on this main page. And then what's really cool is that you can swipe your fingers through this page of apps, which then activates this graphical fisheye lens effect to then get a closer look at each of your various apps. Then any app you hover over and release your finger on will be launched. Now, if you do try this launcher and end up liking it, then I do recommend upgrading to the Pro version given the amount of customizations it does unlock. The most important of which for me is the ability to hide apps on the home screen, plus icon theming, haptic feedback, and all of the rest as well. But aside from that, it's still just a really fun and very unique launcher worth trying out. Following that is Square Home, and this is another launcher that has actually been around for quite a while now, but if you haven't heard of it, well, it actually emulates the default launcher that shipped with Windows phones back when they were still being made. And honestly, despite the fact that Windows devices were discontinued a long time ago, a lot of people still seriously miss the software experience in particular, and the home screen launcher was one of the highlight features. And so the fact that we can recreate that experience quite convincingly on an Android phone is pretty dang great. The home screen here is filled with what are called tiles, which are essentially a combination of app shortcuts and widgets. And what's great is that you can add pretty much as many tiles as you like for essentially any sort of action you can think of. Shortcuts, tile groups, launcher actions, all that good stuff. And then you can also long press any of your tiles to resize them and even to customize further elements like the icon pack, the app label, and you can even change the tap action and long click action for even further added functionality. There's also a built-in app drawer which you can search through, hide apps from, and even create folders within. But then I think my favorite aspect of this launcher are the animations. Seriously, whenever you tap one of your app shortcuts or widgets, the launcher animations just look amazingly fluid. They do technically slow down the overall user experience, but the great thing is that you can completely disable them if you like, or even change the animation altogether in the launcher settings. Oh, and by the way, you can access the settings by pinching the screen in and then by tapping on menu, and the amount of settings you can tweak and customize to your liking is kind of staggering. I don't have time to go into all of them right now, but it is definitely worth taking some time exploring each of these settings because the amount of options is incredible, right up there with some of the most customizable launchers of all time. And just quietly, this might just be my personal favorite launcher from today's list, given just how customizable it is, all whilst managing to maintain an ultra fluid user experience. Okay, second to last today is Mac Launcher, and as the name so helpfully implies, this is a launcher that emulates the Mac OS desktop experience. You've got a dock down the bottom, your various app shortcuts on the side here, and then what's really cool is that the app even comes with an inbuilt file explorer that looks pretty much exactly like the Finder does on Mac OS. You can browse through all your files here, sorted into categories just like the real thing, plus you can even use the applications folder as like a pseudo app drawer if you like. But there is also a proper app drawer accessible via this rocket icon on the dock, so it's nice to have options. There are also some settings you can tweak by tapping on the preferences icon here, although a lot of these do require separate individual paid upgrades, which is a bit of a shame. But then down the bottom here are a bunch of setting shortcuts, which is pretty neat. Oh, and then the last feature worth mentioning is this spot center over to the right here, which gives you a bunch of macOS inspired shortcuts and toggles. Now, the one gripe I have with this launcher, aside from a bunch of features needing separate paid upgrades, is that it actually runs in full screen mode. And this makes tapping on some of the actions at the top a little tricky, and also makes using system gestures when using any of the launcher features really finicky. So let's say you want to navigate back while browsing your files in the Finder File Explorer. Well, this now requires 2 swipes back, which is definitely not that intuitive. I don't think this is a launcher I'd recommend using full time in its current state, but it's still a lot of fun, and with some slight tweaking and refining from the developers, it could become even better. And so finally today, despite the previous few launches already being pretty crazy, we've finally come to Neo Launcher, which for me is by far the craziest of the lot. And that's because it is damn near straight out of a science fiction film with digital HUD-style graphics on show throughout, fancy sound effects whenever you navigate through various parts of the home screen or even just launch an app, and just the way the entire interface has been laid out alongside the animations, it just feels very futuristic indeed. The main screen here plays host to a collection of your favorite apps, as well as a day, time, date, and weather widget at the top. Then down the bottom, we have 4 additional app shortcuts in this dock-like interface. And then swiping up on this dock, or really anywhere on the home screen, will launch into the app drawer. Then in the middle of the dock here is this fingerprint style icon, and tapping on that opens up this sort of quick settings page with a bunch of settings related toggles like changing the ringer profile or turning your phone's torch on or off, plus a heap more. And then from there, we can swipe left to access a page reserved for widgets, then left again for a dedicated newsfeed. Then we can swipe back the other way to see a page of category-specific apps, which is, of course, customizable. And then right again for a bunch of other built-in shortcuts, like a page for taking and managing notes, a phone dialer, an app page, a calendar and clock page, and then finally a shortcut to the launcher settings. And within these settings, you get access to a huge range of tweaks and customizations, though some do require a paid upgrade. But as you can see, it's a wacky yet pretty well-built home screen launcher that is only beat out in terms of fluidity by the Square home launcher. And all I can say is hats off to the development team behind it, because it seems pretty clear they've put a huge amount of effort into making a really impressive and well thought out home screen launcher that is also just about as unique as you can get. But there you have it, 5 super unique home screen launchers that I reckon are seriously cool and worth checking out. If you enjoyed the video, then a sub to the channel would be greatly appreciated. But that's it. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.